You're listening to Myers-Briggs Question Corner with Edythe Richards.
Hello, listeners. I'm coming to you from my home in the Washington, D.C. metro, and like many of you, I'm practicing social distancing. I'm very thankful that I haven't had any COVID-19 symptoms, but my heart goes out to all who do, and I wish them a very speedy recovery. I'm also sending a big shout out to all the healthcare workers and the first responders and the business owners who are keeping things running smoothly during these uncertain times. We really can't get through this without you. So in my last episode, I talked about the difficulties extroverts might be facing with social distancing. And since this podcast is about the Myers-Briggs, today I'd like to talk more generally about how different personality types may cope with the anxiety, the social isolation, safety, and health concerns that the coronavirus pandemic has brought. And then there's the threat of unemployment. And being a career counselor, this is obviously something I'm paying close attention to. And in a future episode, I'll be delving into that. But back to our topic of the day today. Does personality actually play any part into how we behave during turbulent times? Carl Jung theorized that personality is relatively stable over the course of one's life, and as the theory states, we're born with our personality type preferences. Now, for those of you who have been tuning in regularly, you'll know that my stance on this is I believe personality doesn't change, but we as human beings are constantly changing and evolving or de-evolving as the case may be. This is one of those times that our personalities may be put to a test. Essentially, are we adaptable and resilient enough? And are we willing and able to cooperate with others and the executive orders that are in place? As far as the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator goes, I don't believe there's one personality type who's better equipped to handle the COVID-19 pandemic. In terms of what the Myers-Briggs measures, though it can provide some insight into strengths and weaknesses of certain personality traits that might manifest during times like these, I actually think that emotional intelligence is a far better predictor of one's ability to conquer this challenge. And I've actually got an article coming out soon on this very topic, why emotional intelligence is vital to conquer the COVID-19 pandemic. So please be on the lookout for that on my website, www.atopcareer.com. And while you're at it, please follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. Now back to personality. I'm just going to mention a few general things here about Myers-Briggs personality types and how they may respond to what's happening in our world now. So let's start with the introversion-extroversion dichotomy. Obviously, it may be more difficult for extroverted types to practice social distancing. Introverted types tend to have fewer social interactions than extroverted types. And these days, it may be harder for we extroverts, including myself in that category there, to get that social interaction that feeds our brains. But this doesn't mean that introverted types don't need social interaction as well. We're all human and we're all wired to need other human beings to one extent or another. Now, here's something very interesting. I was recently reading an article from a psychologist from Arizona State University who said that extroverts might even have an edge in this time of social distancing. Extroverts may be more likely to actually pick up the phone or FaceTime people when they're in need of interaction. And I think we're on to something here. During periods of stress, it's very important to reach out to others. And if you've ever been through a tremendously stressful period in your life, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I can bet it's highly likely that you had at least one trusted person to help you through that time. So, looking at the second dichotomy, sensing versus intuition. This is about how we gather information and what information we prioritize. Sensing types are drawn to the details first. They're attuned to tangible data and facts, and intuitive types are drawn to the big picture and pay attention to general concepts and theories, and also tend to be future focused. So here's an example of how a sensing type might receive information. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's a stay-at-home order. I have to stay home. The last time I stayed home for a long time was when I was sick. My house isn't clean. My husband isn't at home. He is watching TV. Note that there's no hidden meaning in any of this. It's all about the process of sensation. The mind doesn't attribute any meaning to any of these sensations. It's just what is. Now, let's look at an intuitive example. We're in the middle of a pandemic and there's a stay-at-home order and I'm going to go stir crazy. I'm going to have to find ways to occupy myself at home. I always get like that when I'm at home for too long. Why is that? My husband doesn't seem to have this problem. He's perfectly content to sit in front of the TV, even though there's a lot of laundry that needs to get done. I guess I'll have to do it, so I'll have clean underwear for tomorrow. But why does it even matter if I'm not going to go into the office? I wonder when we're going to go back to work. There are so many people getting sick. We have to be careful if we go outside. So the difference here is that the intuitive response is a web of complex information, and a lot of it is intangible and may or may not happen. While sensing types focus on clarity, intuitive types associate ideas with one another. In terms of this COVID-19 pandemic, one potential issue I can see in the sensing-intuition dichotomy is communication. Sensors communicate in a sequential, detailed way, so it's best to use concrete language and facts and be straightforward when speaking to them. Intuitives are more likely to skip over the details and be attuned to impressions or ideas, so focus on the big picture instead of concrete data and try to speak to their curiosity with ideas or theories. Let's talk about the thinking-feeling dichotomy. Thinking types tend to make decisions based on objective logic, while feeling types tend to focus on the impact on people and use a values-based approach when deciding. With these two types, there's a fundamental difference in how they experience and express emotions. The TF dichotomy is about how you judge and decide things. It's not about being emotional or moody or anxious. In fact, being a feeler doesn't mean that you're overly emotional, and being a thinker doesn't mean you're not emotional at all. It's about which you prioritize when you're making a decision. If you're a thinker, you prioritize impersonal logic, pros and cons, and cause and effect. If you're a feeler, you prioritize values, morals, and personal principles. If you're interested in hearing more about this dichotomy, I'm inviting you to tune into another episode on this subject, Thinking and Feeling Misconceptions, and I'll provide the link in the podcast notes. So let's take a real example that we're probably all dealing with as a result of COVID-19. If you're a feeling type, you may very likely be soaking up a lot of emotions as the world is going on right now. You may feel what other people are going through. Thinkers, on the other hand, may appear to respond in an overly objective and straightforward way, devoid of emotions, which can just make things worse for the feeler because the feeler wants their feelings to be validated. And this is hard for thinkers because feelings aren't logical. If you're a thinker tuning in, a little praise with a feeler goes a long way. Let them know that they're doing a great job in managing their stress, and cite examples if you can. If you're a feeler, try to practice not taking things personally and look at the reality of the situation. It's definitely going to be helpful, especially during these uncertain times, whether you're a thinker or a feeler, to work hard to understand and appreciate differences and try to flex your style accordingly. And last, let's finish with the JP dichotomy. That's judging and perceiving. This is all about our lifestyle orientation. J's tend to be structured and organized and very mindful of time. P's tend to be adaptable and spontaneous. Now, this dichotomy is going to play out in a very big way during these trying times, especially when it comes to working from home. I can imagine that you perceivers who are tuning in may have a harder time sticking to a 9 to 5 type of work schedule unless you're already in a very structured type of role. So naturally, Ps really dislike routine. And let's not even talk about micromanagement. One positive thing about working virtually for perceivers, though, is the ability to be more flexible with their schedules. And I'd like to say, though, that this could become a problem if the rest of the work team are more structured and follow more of a routine. For example, if they're expecting work to be done within regular business hours and they're getting emails at all hours of the night, this could be a problem. So if you're a P or perceiving type tuning in, knowing what the preferred style is for your team is going to be really helpful. If it's expected that you be available at certain times, set some calendar reminders so that you don't miss appointments and factor planning into your day. Make sure that you take regular stretch breaks too. And as much as you can, allow time to complete your work when you're at your best. For J's, it's a different story. Judging types are very time conscious and they tend to be list makers and planners. So this disruption that we're experiencing now is most likely harder on them in many ways than it is for perceivers. Judging types don't like surprises at all. They've got contingency plans for most things, but this pandemic has probably thrown a huge curveball to them, and it may take them some time to adjust. Another potential issue, because J's are goal-oriented and they want things decided and fixed, they may make snap decisions or judgments before they have the needed information to make a proper informed decision. And this is very easy to do in high-charged communication situations without the benefit of nonverbal cues like facial expressions and body language. For more strategies, please tune into my episode entitled Perceivers and Time Management, and I'll include a link in the podcast notes. So we're coming to an end of another episode, and I just want to stress that I hope you and your loved ones are staying safe. Really appreciate you tuning in to Myers-Briggs Question Corner. These are truly uncertain and difficult times, and we've been forced really to change how we interact with others and our day-to-day lives. The more we understand ourselves and our triggers and our personality preferences, the better equipped we'll be to make healthy choices and respond to what life throws at us in a helpful and productive way. Take care, folks. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you'd like to hear more, or you'd like to submit a question yourself, then you can find us at www.atopcareer.com. Until next time. MBTI and Myers-Briggs are registered trademarks of the MBTI Trust.